Of the possibility of treason, the Foreign Office had used its influence to place the investigation through Ballarat, where they felt they could keep some control over it. Superintendent Ballarat was a man with excellent judgment of what his superiors required, and a rich ambition to rise high enough in his profession to become socially acceptable, perhaps even a self-made gentleman. He didn't realize that those he most wished to impress were always able to distinguish a man's origins simply by the way he carried himself, by the turn of a vowel in his mouth. Pitt was a gamekeeper's son who had grown up on a large country estate. He'd been educated as a companion to the son of the house, and had a manner acceptable to the gentry. He had also married considerably above himself, gaining an understanding of a social class closed to most ordinary policemen. Ballarat disliked Pitt, and resented his manner, which he considered insolent, but Ballarat was obliged to admit that Pitt was unquestionably the best man for this investigation. He had done so with an ill grace. Mowbray was staring at Pitt with only slight disappointment, and it quickly disappeared. Apparently he had expected nothing. "Oh, well, you'd better speak to Constable Lowther first. He found the body. And of course you can read the reports that were written at the time. There isn't much." He shook his head. "We tried hard, but there were no witnesses, and none of the stolen pieces ever turned up. We thought of the possibility of an inside job. We questioned the entire staff and came up with nothing." "I dare say I'll do the same," Pitt said, in an oblique apology. "Have a cup of tea while I send for Lowther," Mowbray offered. "It's a vile day. I wouldn't be surprised if it snows before Christmas." "Thank you," Pitt accepted. 10 minutes later, Pitt was sitting in another small, chilly room with a gas lamp hissing on the wall above a scratched wooden table. A thin file of papers rested on it, and opposite Pitt, a stiff, self-conscious constable stood at attention, buttons gleaming. Pitt told him to sit down and be easy. "Yes, sir," Lowther said nervously. "I can remember that murder in Hanover Close pretty clear, sir. What is it as you wants to know?" "Everything." Pitt took the teapot and filled a white enamel mug without asking. He passed it to Lowther, who took it with round-eyed surprise. "Thank you, sir." He swallowed gratefully, composed himself, and began in a low voice. "It was 3:05 on the morning of October 17th, just over 3 years ago. I were on night duty then, and I passed along Hanover Close." "How often?" Pitt interrupted. "Every 20 minutes, sir, reg'lar." Pitt smiled very slightly. "I know that's what it's meant to be. Are you sure nothing held you up anywhere that night?" He deliberately gave Lowther the chance to escape blame if necessary, without telling less than the truth. "No trouble anywhere?" "No, sir." Lowther faced him with totally guileless blue eyes. "Sometimes I do get held up, but not that night. I were round exact, give or take no more'n a minute. That was why I noticed the broken window at number 2 particular, because I knew it weren't broke 20 minutes afore. And it were a front window, too, which is kind of funny. Burglars usually goes to the back, with a little nipper skinny enough to get through the bars and whip round and let 'em in." Pitt nodded. "So I went to the door of number 2 and knocked," Lowther went on. "I had to raise an hell of a row." He flushed. "Beg your pardon, sir. A lot of noise before anyone came down. After about 5 minutes, a footman opened up. Half asleep he were, had a coat over his nightshirt. I told him about the window as was broke, and he was startled like, and took me straight to the room at the front, which was the library." The constable took a deep breath, but his eyes held Pitt's without wavering. "I saw immediate that there was trouble. 2 hard-backed chairs was turned over, lying on their sides. There was 6 books knocked on the floor, upset like, and a decanter spilled on a table near the window as was broke, and the glass lying on the floor, shining in the light." "Light?" Pitt asked. "Footman turned up the gas lamps," Lowther explained. "He were fair shook, I swear to that." "Then what?" Pitt prompted. "I went further into the room." Lowther's face puckered as the memory of that hard stab of human mortality came back to him. "I saw the body of a man on the floor, sir, half on his face, sort of legs bent a bit, like he'd been took by surprise from behind. His head were matted with blood." He touched his own right temple at the hairline. "And there were a big bronze horse on a stand, about 10 inches high, lying on the carpet, about 18 inches away from him. He were wearing a dressing robe over a silk nightshirt, and had slippers on his feet. I went over to him to see if there were anything I could do for him, though I thought he were dead even then." The look of an adult compassion for a child crossed his face. "The footman can't have been more than 20, if he were that, and he got took queer and sat down rather sudden. He said, 'Oh, Gord, it's Mr. Robert. Poor Mrs. York.'" "And the man was dead?" Pitt said. "Yes, sir, quite dead, but he was still warm. And, of course, I knew the window hadn't been broke when I passed 20 minutes afore." "What did you do then?" "Well, it were plain he were murdered, and it looked like someone broke in. The glass were all inside, and the catch were undone." His face clouded. "But a shocking amateur job it were. No star-glazing nor nothing, and such a mess." Pitt didn't need to ask what star-glazing was. Many expert thieves used the trick of pasting paper over glass to hold all the shards, while cutting a neat, silent circle which could be lifted out, so a hand could be inserted to open the latch. A master cracksman could do the job in 15 seconds. "I asked the footman if they had one of them telephone instruments," Lowther continued. "He said as they had, so I went out of the library and told him to stay at the door. I found the instrument and called the station and reported the crime. Then the butler came down. He must have heard the noise, and when the footman didn't go back upstairs, he come to see what was going on. He formally identified the dead man as Mr. Robert York, the son of the Honourable Piers York, the master of the house. But he was away from home on business, so there was nothing for it but to tell the elder Mrs. York, the victim's mother. The butler sent for her lady's maid in case she were overcome at the news. But when she came down and we had to tell her, she were very calm, very dignified." He sighed in admiration. "Makes you realise what real quality is. She were white as a ghost and looked like she were dead herself, poor soul. But she never wept in front of us, just asked her maid to steady her a bit." Pitt knew of many great women who were bred to bear physical pain, loneliness, or bereavement, by always showing the world a serene face, shedding all their tears in private. They were the sort of women who had sent their husbands and sons to battle on the fields of Waterloo and Balaclava, or to explore the Hindu Kush, or find the source of the Blue Nile, and then to settle and administer the empire. Many had gone themselves into unknown lands, enduring appalling privation and the loss of every familiar sight and sound. In his mind, Mrs. York was such a woman. Lowther went on quietly, recalling the sombre house and its grief. "I asked them if anything were missing, as they knew. It were hard to have to ask a lady at such a time, but we had to know. She were quite calm, and just walked round the room careful-like, and she told us that, as far as she could say, there were 2 silver-framed miniature portraits, dated 1773, a crystal paperweight engraved with a design of scrolls and flowers, a small silver jug used for flowers, and that weren't hard to come at, because the flowers themselves was on the floor, and the water spilled on the carpet. Don't know how we missed seeing it before. And a first edition of a book by Jonathan Swift, she said, as she couldn't see anything else." "Where was the book kept?" "On the shelves with the other books, Mr. Pitt, which means as he knew it were there. I asked, and she said as it didn't look nothing special from the back of it, you'd see ordinary." "Ah." Pitt let out his breath slowly. He changed the subject. "Was the dead man married?" he asked. "Oh, yes, but I didn't disturb his wife, poor creature. She hadn't woke, and I couldn't see no point in having to tell her in the middle of the night. Better to let her own family do that." Pitt could hardly blame him. Having to tell the sad news to the loved ones of the victim was one of the hardest duties in a murder case. The only thing even more difficult was seeing the face